side? Is that red one? But under the shoe menu, you just, I switched it to cool.
I think so. I think
White,
yeah.
black.
Read it? It was the username earlier.
There, black and white is kind of what traditionally is published spectrograms. There's also a rainbow, a rainbow one, black color palette, red is colors. The color obviously won't affect the process, well, not obviously, but the color choice won't affect any of the later process things, just to display them.
Just your mental health.
Just
You like that.
I like content because I like to see some of the color, but it represents the amplitude as well, my eyes anyway, more so than and let's see. Somebody discovered there was a bug. Stretch horizontally some. Ishmael will display your sound file. I have it set to pause at end of screen on the run menu right there. So I turn that on, and it's stopping at the end of the first half of the file now. I think I did click the stretch button twice, which makes it doing it 2 times will make it expand by a factor of 2. So this is the first half of the file. But Ishmael isn't currently paused, it's stopped. For some reason it's stopping halfway through the file instead of pausing halfway through the file. And so if I start Ishmael up again, instead of showing me the second half of the file, it just shows me the first half again. So this is a bug of some sort. I think it's related to the fact that sometimes when you have paused it and the screen turned on, it will overshoot a little bit and not actually show the very initial beginning of the file because it overshoots and covers it up. So there's some kind of bug going on with pausing it in the screen. So I'm going to turn that off. Okay, let's see. Colors. Next, sound playback. So if you don't have this Proper Seal file open it up again. You can play sounds out of Ishmael just by selecting something like that and clicking the speaker on it. Now, this isn't, I think for most of you, this isn't going to do anything because I don't think the desktops have any speakers in them. But people who have laptops will have speakers in their laptop and you should be able to hear the sound. The desktops don't have speakers in them, do they?
Yeah.
Oh, did? Okay.
Point to the icon up at the top again. Where the
Okay, it's the speaker icon right there. The sound playback is based on the waveform of the signal, not the spectrogram, so it'll still have that whatever noise is in there, that we remove by equalization. It'll still be in the sound playback. There's another one I want to show you, which is open up this blue demo file again. Demo NE069 and 46. So there's our blue whale. We're going to make a spectrogram, appropriate size. Yeah, there's our blue whale file again. Spectrogram frame size is 1024 to get that view. Shows me this B call pretty well, but the A calls look like side bands. So if I select some of this and play it, we play those 4 AB call pairs. I don't really hear very much. Part of this is that I have selected about, I don't know, 15 minutes, 10 minutes worth of sound right there. So we've got to sit here and wait for 10 minutes to hear it. But partly I'm also not hearing much because the sound is really low in frequency. And these speakers are not going to do a good job representing it. And in fact, our ears don't hear really low frequencies very well. So stop the sound playback then again. Under Run, there is something that says playback options. And I'm going to do a playback speed factor. basically, you can type in a number there and tell it to speed up. Let's speed this up by a factor of 10. Now we'll go by a lot faster, and you should be able to hear it.
You're doing 20. Here.
There it goes.
Any questions back here, Dave?
What was the question?
Does the playback take into account the frequency range of the selection, or does it play the whole thing?
No, it does not. So yes, that's a good question. It will always play, when it plays from the waveform, it will play the entire frequency range. So it only really pays attention to the beginning and end of the box. It doesn't really pay attention to how high it is. So that's how you can play sounds back. Sharon made the good suggestion that we try, that I show getting real-time sound input using a microphone. So we're going to try and scare up a microphone so we can do some real-time sound input into Ishmael also. I'll show what a voice looks like, say. Saving sound. I can also, if I make a selection in Ishmael, I can save it. Save selection as. And it comes up with a default name for me. In this case, it's this one here is Tom, blah, blah, blah. So I don't like that name, so I'm just going to say example sound for my saved file. And it uses WAV files by default, but you can save as WAV files, the most common kind of sound file on Windows for lossless sound recording after MP3, which is lossy. AIF files, which is the most common kind on Mac, or AU files, which is the common kind on Linux systems. You can save in any of those formats. You just make a selection, and then choose that thing off the menu under the file menu. Just save it. And now I have a sound file with just that in it. Not enough. Okay, save it.
It may not work for desktops, especially.
Because of security.
No, it just sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, and we're not sure why.
But it's not doing that on the laptop, so.
The laptop.
The laptops seem to be fine. And every once in a while, the desktops do work.
So we're not sure if it's just taking, does it take a while to show up on?
It doesn't take that long.
It shouldn't take, yeah. I'm going to try a subscription.
Make your computer easier to use.
No, it's in these directories. I don't know why.
Make your
I've never
computer
heard it
easier to
before,
use.
so it's just what's going on.
The IT guys thinks it's a combination. They think it's either the computers or a combination of the computers and the program.
Means they don't know.
Well, hopefully this won't work.
I've asked. It's been-
Computer is not an IT thing.
Computers on strike.
What's that? You don't change?
Straight out.
That sometimes works. That is also sometimes not.
Are you going to get the directory?
try doing program input.
Good.
Okay, I just took the microphone.
It's not letting me play because something is using sound playback.
So for capturing real-time sound, I'm going to do
On the player. I wanted to reset, but it doesn't seem like I can. Like I just logged out and couldn't do that.
didn't show up as a sound card.
Oh, that is
Good.
Oh, is that new microphone? Yeah, we'll worry about that. We'll have him fix that later. We just need a playback. We just need a playback. What were you doing? Oh, interesting.
Okay. Now I want you guys to try opening a sound file and making a spectrogram. So open the file that you see down here at the bottom. Move it up. So that you can back the room. So in the energy sum directory, there's a thin whale file. And see if you can get a spectrogram that looks.
Playing the audio is not that important.
You should do that.
See if you can get it.
That's a weird one.
You had to start that to kill it.
Yeah, I like that.
Thank you.
Some of those things that probably restarting the computer would help with, but I don't know if we can restart the
It's funny because like nobody else's weird issues that have cropped up were the same as mine. I had yesterday. Actually, I had to install like reinstall Ishmael because it like wouldn't let me open anything.
My virus protection destroyed it the first time through. With the like, we don't recognize this, you can't use it. No. Like, please let it through, and then I had to re-download it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you did go ahead.
Yeah, Jenny said that you guys were on a cruise. Yeah. That's fun. I did. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, like April, May? May.
What's wrong with it?
Audio playback.
Yeah.
It doesn't want to like.
Something else is secretly using program which was nothing.
Good.
It was just like secret
Good, I'm so glad.
I imagine it's previous instances of which
I did a lot of stretching.
they no longer exist, but they want to be there.
Good to almost 10 years ago.
Ishmael, where did it come from? Ishmael.
Moby Dick?
Is it
It also stands for something
yeah, but it's from
that they got.
Is it the captain or something?
Yeah.
No, it's the main character, or the narrator.
It's like the first line called me Ishmael.
It's the only line.
Yeah, so there's something funky going on with
Like Aaron should guess his kind of own version of this
machines
called
despite our best efforts,
Ulysses. But like I'm
so you should
thinking
be able to
here.
save to the desktop, maybe not in the folder that we created, which why that would be, I have no idea. But we'll talk to the IT guy again and see what's going on, because we did our best. We created those folders, so we should be able to do it.
The IT guy said it should work, and so he has no idea why it's not working.
And it does work, just not every
Just,
time.
yeah, just occasionally.
Also, we were saying to the desktop, we open the file. So we were also losing our connection to the file server too, and if you just wait a second, usually that will come back. And then if everything starts to go very bad in Ishmael, the one thing I would say is that sometimes you just need to close it. We've done so many things that you kind of, it's usually operator, but sometimes it's little Ishmael not so it's just best to close it and start all over again, and that often will,
I'm not having luck in the desktop, so if you did,
we did all that. Yeah, so we'll have to ask them to take a look at one, maybe, and change the permissions.
I'm trying to understand what's an observation space thing to like find out.
these are fin whale pulses. They frequency over
Yeah, there's stuff in English.
25 to 18
that issues because they assigned me 2 student numbers. They assigned me 2 student
This
numbers.
is a very long file.
Computer now 2 days before you go to CC.
Pausing at the end of the first screen full of data.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I had a glitch where all of a sudden all of my emails just disappeared. Yeah, it's like,
I think the start part
it's like all my tabs are breaking out.
Then if I change it,
It's like, that's so nice.
like
It's like, and then the other one, they're like, oh, I don't even have any more computer issues. I'm like, you used to have to redo things like 3 or 4 times.
We need a computer.
what's is this part of the funeral call? They're biologists. Some part just
I think that's just noise.
Is this
Yeah, that looks like mechanical noise.
I think that's what it is. Because I think those are just the calls, but I'm not sure what it is yet.
See the detail of the pulse
Next
shape.
week.
How did you get routers? Do you do equalization?
So do this.
Are you just zoomed in on your y-axis?
No.
Is there a way of zooming in without?
Yeah, so when you zoom in, you can scroll.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know why I don't have it. Are we on a different?
Where does frequency start? Start zero.
It could be brightness and contrast. Did you already do your equalize gram thing?
Anybody have questions or want some help?
Are you guys looking at the file? See there, when you zoom in, it's gone.
Yeah, I zoomed
Oh,
in.
you zoomed on that line.
Now I'm trying to get it.
It looks like mine has already been.
Yeah, yours. Sometimes if you don't reset the settings, it'll just keep the equalize gram in place.
But that's all turned off.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, and I restarted it again. Uninstall or do you not know how to do that?
So I try to reinstall.
Where'd
Where'd you put it? That's the problem. I can't put it in program.
I know, I think I did
Anyway,
that right
okay.
now. I might have.
It might be.
See, it says it's running. No.
How about can you uninstall? It's filtered. Computer purgatory.
Right.
Okay. So we just need to have him come uninstall it.
Yeah,
And then we'll talk to him at lunch.
You
It's
didn't
not
do
you.
anything.
No, it's good to know. Yeah, maybe we can just get you set up with a different one. You already have it loaded on there? Okay. Is it open? Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah, so why don't you just move to the end now?
Sorry about that.
One computer. That one we have to call in.
Well, Flavio or.
Anybody, but Flavio is on duty now.
That's obvious.
That's Flavio.
It's a good problem. Is there any think that's? I want to check the settings. Pretty sure that's the. Okay. So she's got. Okay. All right.
saved it. I saved my little tester line.
Yeah, so if those of you who are doing testing back here, our super users, if you're doing testing and you can figure out the symptom, then the IT guy's gonna come back in at lunch. And I don't know if it's a folder permissions. I can't see the permissions on each of the folders, but we'll have them.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll try to fix that.
The fact that that was saved.
What if you file
Yeah, so it's really strange.
There's only in the first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's two different places.
Yeah, so the saving of a file is working on laptops that aren't on the network as well, so. We'll see if we can get the permissions.
This is the whole file.
This is a kilosecond.
Oh.
This one. The left one. And do the run. Pause the image. 36 seconds in here, so 1,000.
No idea.
So yeah, keep zooming in. Or stop.
Maybe mine got saved. The file was saved. It's possible that someone did it already and saved it accidentally. Yours would have messed up.
Do the whole way.
You're looking
Yeah, I think
yeah, sorry, what is this? Pull up wherever the thumbnail. And then figure out the date one. What's the size? Oh, 14. Yeah.
it's also created after that.
Yeah.
Even if you. Again. We can't. Yeah. So we just have to take notes, and IT will be here at lunch, so we're going to show them. Yeah, so we'll have to. So now nothing's working. So this is weird because that's what's happening back here too.
Bueno, también.
This one is just a
Wait, no, you do have the files.
Yeah, I think it might just be the color.
The color, yeah.
But I didn't want to.
We'll get Trevor. But the other files are
But other
working.
files
So I think I would move on, Dave,
Yeah.
and then we'll and it seems like it's a
Mine's. Like yours are louder than the
Okay.
Yeah.
Is anybody else besides Megan not been able to get to something that looks sort of like this? Anybody need help? Yeah. Okay.
Raise your hand if you help.
Curtis.
What if the
You're close. You're
I don't know. It might not look like that.
Good. Cooler one. I did 0, 0 patterns.
I'll mention that Megan just had problems with the sound file. For some reason, it's opening up like looking like this. And it seems to be something with her computer, and it's not behaving the same way as anybody else's. I have no idea what's wrong with that machine.
I appreciate that. Not just letting you say
without it.
I can't figure it out either, so.
You can hit the stop button. And now you can.
This one, I ended up with a spectrogram frame size of about 64 samples, 0.64 seconds in this case. The call is a little bit less than a second long, and so my frame size is a little bit smaller than that even. And that seems to show the sweep of the call fairly well. If I do a shorter frame size, I get good time resolution, so then all the frequencies smear together. Let me show you that. Try something shorter, like that. You don't see any of the sweep at all of those fin whale pulses because all the frequencies get smeared together a little bit too much. If I try one that's too long, I had it on 64, so I'm going to make it longer, 56. Then things smear together horizontally, and again, I can't see that sweep. So it's kind of that magic number in the middle that allows me to see, or something good number, allows me to see the down-sweeping character of fin whale.
Is Aaron's based on this?
Question, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
When it takes the frame of data for making a spectrogram, zero padding means it takes the frame of data. Takes that data.
It does have some,
Takes one frame of data.
it's not very user friendly.
Pads it out. If you have one F0 padding, it pads it out with a bunch of zeros. So the amount of data is still the same, just have some other stuff appended. Because it has all these zeros appended, the Fourier transform gets something that's twice as long, and that makes it come out with twice as many frequency bins, so twice as many horizontal lines in the spectrogram. Like I said, the resolution is no better. You're kind of just interpolating values in between, so it makes it look smoother, but doesn't actually give you any extra information to do zero padding. So it gives you a prettier picture, essentially. It doesn't actually improve the resolution or anything.
But that's important sometimes. You do want a pretty picture.
Pretty pictures are important sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes.
I rarely use zero padding values greater than 3x for making, even for making pretty pictures. Okay, let's go on. Preferences files. So Ishmael has a way of saving your settings. If you're looking at a spectrogram a certain way or running a certain kind of detector or something, you can save all your settings so you can get back to that later on. And the way you do that is if you're not running, file save settings as, like that. Right now I'm going to do save all preferences, which will save all the settings that are in Ishmael. It includes all the things about what sound file is being read, how the spectrogram is getting computed, your brightness and contrast, where the window is on the screen, and the shape of any other windows you might have, everything. All your detection parameters, localization, the whole works get saved. So I say save. Now I know it's going to let me save something here. I'm going to stick it on the desktop, see what happens. Oh, mine should be well. Let's hope that it actually saved it. So then, there. Yes, it's managing to save preferences files for me. So then if I quit Ishmael, restart it, I can get back to where I was. So you see right now it has opened the test.wave file that we opened initially. If I go load those settings, here it is down here on my desktop. If you use the left and back over, you can see it, but it has saved my preferences right there. If I do file, load settings, and then go back to my desktop, and select that one, it'll load it, so Ishmael, back to where I was.
Try to save.
Okay, so it's a way of saving all your work and coming back to it sometime later on. In addition, I didn't mention this before, but this works for sound files as well as preferences files, that if you have something open, a different file, drag it onto Ishmael and drop it, and it will install that preferences file and set it up for a run. The same is true of sound files. If I take one of these sound files, let's see sound file examples, let's do the harvest seal. It'll run that sound file for me also. When you drag a sound file onto Ishmael, it'll use whatever settings are in place. So these were the settings I set up for the fin whale. It doesn't show me harbor seals very well, but it's there. So preferences files and sound files, you can just drag and drop onto Ishmael, and it will run them for you. Okay. Now, here we go. That was saving all of your preferences. Sometimes you just want to save a detector. We haven't gotten to detectors yet, but if you set up a detection process in Ishmael, sometimes you just want to save the parameters that are relevant to doing that detection. You don't want to save what input files are getting used, what output files might be produced, which we'll get to later, where your window is on the screen, any of that stuff. So that's another way of saving preferences. So if I say save settings, I can save selected preferences, and if I just want detection preferences for a detector process, I just choose that one and do save, and it'll let me save the detection preferences. And I usually, if I'm doing this, I'll label it with some kind of notification that it's just a detector in detection. I'm not actually doing detection right now, but I'm going to pretend that I am. So you can save your detection preferences, you can save your localization preferences, or you can save everything. Those are the options. Lastly, these preferences files are readable as text files. If you click on one, here's my fin whale. I'm going to say open with. You can just more apps. I'm going to open it in Notepad, and it looks like that. They're somewhat readable. There's a comment at the beginning telling you what it is, what this settings file came from, and then you can see all the different things that Ishmael uses. There are hundreds of them for displaying a certain sound file and processing it with your detectors or localizers or whatever. It's okay to delete sections out of the preferences file if you like. If you want to do a preferences file that's for maybe displaying a spectrogram, you don't care about all the other settings for detectors and whatnot. You can just go delete those whole sections out of the preferences file and just keep your spectrogram setting if you like. So there's a spectrogram section down here.
Can you also just put a pound sign in front of it to cancel it out?
Yes, the comments start with a pound sign, as Shannon just noticed. So you can comment out sections of your preferences file if you like. Here's the spectrogram. Here, you might want to keep just that part or something if you want to save only your spectrogram settings. You can do it using a text editor. Do that. Spectrogram. Actually, I'll keep equalization to position, form, and ceiling. Then I have a really small preferences file, just like that. I can just save it and suddenly have something that's only for viewing the spectrogram. Okay? Any questions about that part? Okay. Ishmael does not naturally save your settings. So if you are doing something and you've made your spectrogram and you're running a detector or something, you want to save those preferences as an IPF. Just save those settings. I try to do this fairly often, just so I don't lose my work. If Ishmael crashes or something, I might lose the settings that are in it. So I save the settings. There's a set of default preferences that whenever you launch Ishmael, it loads those. It's called ish default. It's the name of the file. It's stored in your user home directory somewhere. In Ishmael, you can specify that by doing save settings as default. So I have this harbor seal open right now, some settings that I like. I do save settings as default. Now when I quit Ishmael, as soon as I restart it, I'll have that harbor seal file open again. And maybe Spectrogram, there it is. So when you save settings as default, it will reopen with whatever your current state is. Save settings as default automatically saves all your settings, it's not just the detection of location. It will save all of them. So that's a way of getting back to a place where you'd work for and launching Ishmael in that place.
Especially good when you're testing a detector.
Especially good when you're testing a detector and you're refining it every time you get to a new level or refinement. I find it's good to save as default. So then when I launch Ishmael again, I've got that detector, the best one I have yet. Multi-channel files. Let's look at a multi-channel file. Ishmael. Let's open in that sound file examples folder. There's a channel called 4-channel. EB 100709 blah blah blah. Open that one. You notice in part of the open window, there's a set of channels to read. It says I'm going to read all 4 of them. And by default, Ishmael will display all 4 of them too. So it's so here is the spectrogram of that 4-channel file. Notice that it's going kind of slow. That's because the sample rate is fairly high, and my spectrogram settings have a lot of zero padding. I'm going to dial it down, and a small hop size. So like I said, if you make the hop size bigger, it goes faster. If you do less zero padding, it will also go faster. So let's see how fast it goes now. Yeah, it's really faster. That's for the sound. Now, Ishmael's reading in all those channels. I don't have to look at all of them. On the view menu, you get to pick which channels you want to look at. If it says all channels, the way to make it start doing less of them is to say only one channel, and then pick the other channels you want to view. So say I want to view channels 1 and 4. I can pick those ones and look at a subset of the channels that are in there. There's a distinction between channels that Ishmael reads and processes, which is controlled on the open file menu. This one. This will control what sound flows into Ishmael, which of these channels get checked here. The other one on the menu controls what you see, but the other channels can still be in Ishmael and getting processed even if you're not looking at them. So the one on the view menu controls what you see, but doesn't control what's happening inside Ishmael. Only what's getting displayed on the screen.
So is it still calculating the spectrogram?
It will calculate the spectrogram if you have a detector that needs it. It won't, if you don't have anything else in Ishmael that needs a spectrogram for those other channels, it won't calculate them. Any questions about that? Oh, no, I didn't. Sharon just pointed out that part of the open file menu below, once I've selected a file, there are 2 tick boxes here, check boxes, that make Ishmael rescale the file you read in. Fit this file to the window in time means that Ishmael will adjust the time scaling so that one entire file fits on the screen at once. And similarly in frequency, it'll adjust the frequency scaling so that it goes from 0 to the top frequency visible from a sound file, which is half the sample rate, open Nyquist rate. So for instance, in this file, it looks like it goes up to about 16 kilohertz there. That means the sample rate is probably 32 kilohertz, twice as much as the top frequency I can see. And because this box was checked when I opened up the file, Ishmael has scaled it so that I can see all the frequencies present in the sound file. But you don't have to have those checked. If you uncheck these, anytime you open a new file, it'll keep whatever scaling you had before. Sometimes this is good. if you want to have the same time and frequency scaling for different length files, say, so that things animal calls will appear the same no matter how long your file is. Other times you want to scale things to time so that you can see all of your data in one shot. The one caveat about fitting it in time is if you have a really long sound file, your memory can fill up on your computer. So if you have a, I don't know, gigabyte sound file or something, which is not that uncommon these days, when Ishmael reads the sound in, it'll keep all that data in memory. As long as it's visible on the screen, Ishmael has a copy of the data in memory, both the time series and the spectrogram. So it can take a lot of your memory if you have a really long sound file. So be careful of this thing if you're working with long sound files. You might want to uncheck that box and just have Ishmael scroll through. If Ishmael starts scrolling through a sound file and wrapping around, so like this, fetch a bunch of times, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Like that. As soon as it wraps around, it starts forgetting the older data and not keeping it in memory anymore. So you can process sound files that are arbitrarily long, gigabyte sound files, no problem, provided you have it scrolling around so Ishmael doesn't try to keep stuff in memory anymore. The reason Ishmael has to keep stuff in memory when it reads it in is if something's on the screen, you could draw a selection box and try to save sound in it, or do the other things that you can do with selections, measure them, or send them to get located or something. So Ishmael has to have a copy of the data in order to be able to do that. But if it's off the screen, Ishmael is happy to forget about it and not use it in memory anymore. Thanks, Brian. Channels to do. We're going to talk about channels for detection and saving later on. Any other questions about multi-channel files? Like I said, Ishmael is currently set up to read up to 64 channel files. Yeah.
So, for the multi-channel, all the channels have to be saved in one file. Is there a way to read in like 7 files?
There is not a way to do that in Ishmael. I have MATLAB tools that will take up several single channel files and zip them together into one multi-channel file that's time synchronized. But it doesn't happen in Ishmael. That's a good question. Okay. Unknown file formats. Sometimes you get a data set that doesn't have WAV files or AIF files or any of the file formats that Ishmael knows. You can still get the data into Ishmael often. Ishmael has a facility for reading unknown file types and file extensions. But you do have to specify how the sound data is formatted, and you have to get that information from whoever recorded the file or whoever made the instrument that recorded the file, so that you know details about how the sound file is laid out. So let's look at that. Open this file. So as soon as you select it, Ishmael will allow you to open any type of file. You could open a Word document in Ishmael if you wanted, but it will give you this thing and say, okay, do you think this is a sound file? And says if you know the format of the file's data, maybe you still be able to read or write that file. You want to try this. So we're going to say yes here. And you get this. This is where you specify how the sound data were recorded. One of the most important things about a sound file is the sample rate of the recording, how many samples per second get recorded. This number here is standard for a lot of audio processes and CDs and things, if you remember what those are. The number of channels of data, often for read time recordings, that's one channel, but you can have as many as you want, up to 64. Bytes per sample, how long the data is. 1 byte is 8 bits. So if you have 8-bit data, it's 1 byte. 16-bit data is very common for sound files. Now, 24 and 32-bit bits per sample, which is 3 or 4 bytes per sample. Those kind of files are getting common. Most sound files are recorded with integer data. There are a few kinds of data files that get recorded in floating point format. And for floats, you have to have either 4 bytes per sample or 8 bytes per sample. Your files can have headers that Ishmael will ignore. You have to tell it how big the header is that you want to ignore before the sound data starts in your file. So the header of a data file has kind of metadata about the file. What the sample rate is, typically number of channels, maybe when the sound was recorded, a date stamp of some sort, that kind of stuff. And so you want Ishmael to only be paying attention to the sound data, and so you tell it to ignore that stuff at the start of the file. Similarly, there can be a trailer on a file. Not very many files have trailers on them, but there's a facility for ignoring stuff at the end of the file also. Sample value offset is typically 0. Sometimes some sound files have a sample value offset that's non-zero. Some of our sample offsets for data that's recorded in our lab has a sample offset of 32,000 essentially. And lastly, there's this thing called byte order. Windows machines and Suns and older Macintoshes would record data in different, a single number gets written down in different orders in a sound file, in different byte order. And so you have to know what this is. Most data nowadays, no, I can't even say that. Unix is also over on this side. Sun and Mac are both Unix operating systems underneath. You just have to know what the byte order is for your data for Ishmael to be able to read it. So if you specify all those things, Ishmael can read the sound file. And I forget in the manual what numbers we're supposed to use for this.
32768, and
1
then it's 2
kilohertz.
bytes.
Okay, 1,000 hertz. And 1 channel per file. One channel. 2 bytes per sample. Integers. No header. No trailer. So 0 and 0 for the sample value offset is 768. That's if that number is not 0 for a 2 byte per sample file, this is the number. And then it's Sun Mac byte order. So that we want to read it in 1 channel, and I'm going to fit the file in my. This is a file full of air gun sounds. And that's what air gun sounds look like. There are also shifts going on here. This file is pretty long. The unit of time here is kiloseconds. So this is 7,000 kiloseconds, meaning 7,200 seconds, which is probably what this is 2 hours. 1 hour is 60 times 60 seconds, 60 seconds per minute, and an hour has 36 seconds. So this is 2 hours worth of data. And there are some pulses happening about every 10 seconds. Thank you. So if you get data or record your own data, it's in some file format that Ishmael doesn't know. It's sometimes often impossible to get it into Ishmael anyway. I will say with multi-channel data, Ishmael wants the data to be interleaved, meaning there's a sample from channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, blah, 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 channel N, whatever many you have, and then it starts over at channel 1 again. It expects the samples to be interleaved like that. Not all sound file formats do that. Sometimes they have a whole block of data from channel 1 and then the same size block of data from channel 2 and channel 3. Ishmael can't deal with those and wants what's called interleaved, where you have a single sample from each file, single sample from each channel grouped together, and then it goes on to the next sample. Any questions about this part? I don't know how many of you encounter files like this. Things that hydrophones that are set up to record audio data, autonomous hydrophone instruments to record audio data, usually record in a file format that's, WAV or AIF or something that's fairly widespread. But if you're using scientific data acquisition tools, instruments, boards with other software than Ishmael, they often get recorded in other sound file formats that Ishmael may not know about. So that this facility is useful in that case. Questions? Let's see. I have set up Ishmael to be able to read this file with that format. That's it. Unrecognized file types. I can get Ishmael to open. I can set it up so that Ishmael will open any other file that has the same extension using that format. So right now, the top box is ticked. When Ishmael tries to open a file for the first time that it doesn't know about, it'll say, it'll ask you what kind of file is this? Do you want to specify how the file is formatted? But you can set it up to say, okay, I'm using this type of file that has an extension of DAT, data file, and I want to tell Ishmael, whenever I read a DAT file, to assume it's the same file format that I just specified. And to do that, you check this other thing, specify what the extension is, like that. And as soon as I do that, anytime Ishmael encounters a .dat file, it'll assume that it's that file format you specified with all those settings for the sample rate and rights per sample and all that stuff. So it'll, if you have a large data set with a lot of files, that's what you want to do with that thing. Okay. Measurements. Ishmael has a measurement facility. This is relatively new. It allows you to make acoustic measurements of sounds. So let's try and open up. Let's look at these blue whales. Again, actually, file. See anything? All right, I'm gonna make a spectrogram that's appropriate for these blue whales. So size of 4, say. Good. So they're my blue whales. A little bit brighter. Now, to make a measurement, what I do is draw a box around the call that I want to measure. Yeah, let's measure this one. And I'm going to view the data log. On the view menu, this is where measurements get recorded. Data log. Now I go to my selection and right-click on it. As soon as I do that, it puts a measurement into the data log. I guess you guys in the back of the room can't see this here. Here's my data log. If I select another one, another measurement, let's go another one, another entry. Right now, my data log is making a huge number of acoustic measurements. Things like this. You can see some of the things that are getting measured. Some of the things are specific to the file. Channel number, there's only one channel in this file, so the result can be 1 for this file. Sample rate, similarly, is the same for the whole file, so that's not going to change. Frame rate is about how I make a spectrogram. How fast the spectrogram frames go by. Start time and end time refer to the, and low frequency and high frequency refer to the shape of this box right here. So start time is there, end time is there, low frequency is there, high frequency is there. Duration, just the time from the start to the end. Bandwidth is the low frequency up to the high frequency. I'm not going to explain all of these because there are 30 some of them. You can scroll through and see all the different measurements. But let me, you can choose which ones are in your measurement log. Data log entries, where you do it. You can see what's on there. And here, I'm going to uncheck a lot of these. And as I uncheck these things, they go away from my data log. Go ahead and set the purposes file. It didn't have all these, but sorry about that. So now, my data log has just the ones that I put down here. Start and end time and low and high frequency, you almost always want to know those, so you know which call you were measuring when you're doing this thing. Signal to noise ratio, I always like to know because that indicates how clear a call is, how much the call rises above background noise. The call being the signal and noise being background noise. And the ratio between those is S and R, noise ratio. If this says, okay, was this a really clear call or is it a somewhat clear call? And so it's a very useful thing to do. A lot of the yes.
Oh, so the measurements are from where you're placing the box.
Cool.
So
Yeah, I was getting that also.
call is the
Like,
center of
okay, a
the
few
box,
times and
and
then it comes up.
based on the red dotted line.
Yes. Let me.
Okay, that time.
Really?
Ishmael has a measurement system that is designed to make a bunch of measurements that are what are called noise resistant, that kind of ignore the words of the box and only have background noise and focus on what's in the call. And I'm going to explain how that works. I have a presentation about it. I just want to show a couple slides on it. No, but you can. No, there isn't really. A way to do that. Like we wanted to do noise spectra or something over time. Yeah.
That's the right click. Right click.
Okay, I'm going to show some stuff here about how Ishmael calculates some of these measures. These noise resistant measures are called. So I'm going to illustrate it with this humpback whale vocalization. So there's a humpback whale vocalization, and I draw. That's a picture of the loudness of the call over time. So I've subtracted out background noise. So these numbers are 0 when there's no call present. And then as the call gets loud, it gets louder, quieter, and then when the call ends. So that's called the time envelope. Pardon?
How do you view the time?
You can't do that in Ishmael. This is kind of what's going on behind the scenes. For making these noise resistant measurements, the basic idea idea is you pay attention to times when the call is the loudest, so the spots that are the lightest here. Ishmael's calculation process pays more attention, weights the measurement more at times when it's loudest. It uses the loudness of the call for a weighting factor. So it sorts the time like that and finds the loudest parts. Takes the point where 90% of the call energy is present. So it'll pick out the pixels here where 90% of the energy is present, and discards the other 10%, which is almost all of the black areas out here. And then uses that to define the time bounds. So these are the time bounds of this thing. It's saying 90% of all the energy in this spectrogram is present between these two bars. That's the 90 percentile of the time bounds. It does a similar thing at frequency. To choose the frequency bounds like that. And so 90% of the energy is between these, is within this box. This is called the feature box. So I drew an initial box around my call that was bigger than this, and it kind of shrinks it down to say, okay, this is when the important stuff is happening in this call. This is the kind of the spirit of Ishmael's noise-resistant features. It doesn't use a predefined reference level for how loud the call should be. It looks at the call itself and the data and uses percentiles, the 90th percentile and 10th percentile, to select reference levels, and uses the background noise estimate to decide what the reference level is, and uses the energy in the call to guide the feature measurement.
So does that mean if you're highlighting a call, you can sort of purposely include some background noise around the call?
Yeah, typically you don't have to purposely do that. Most calls, the shape of most calls will mean that if you draw a box around your call, you're going to get a fair bit of background noise. You don't have to include any extra. If you have a call that was like very rectangular in shape or something, those harbor seal sounds are sort of like that. Maybe you would want to draw a little bit bigger box in that case.
You don't need to pad it like have a second before and have a second.
Typically, no. For almost all animal calls, you wouldn't have to do that. Only if the sort of the picture of the call in the spectrum happened to look like a rectangle, you drew your box. Even then, you'd still only be excluding a little bit of the edges, so it really wouldn't affect the measurement a whole lot. So let's see. So the upshot of this is that the measurements get weighted by the energy of the localization. So that the measurements are paying attention to the loud parts of the call, which are present even for faint calls, and less attention to the faint parts of the call, which might disappear for a distant call or something. There's a duration measure from the feature box you can use. That is simply the end of the call minus the beginning. So there's a duration measure in Ishmael for the box that you drew, and then there's also this feature box duration, which is the 90th percentile points. And similar for frequency, you can get the bandwidth of the 90th percentile points. The place these show up in Ishmael is those measurements that start with an M. If you see those there, that's what the M refers to, this measurement system. Another measurement you can get is the median time, which is the point during a call. Let's see, the point during a call when half the energy is before and half the energy is after. Which, for a call that's pretty continuous like this, is going to be pretty near the middle of the call. Sometimes calls start out loud and get quieter, and so that would shift it in one direction. But the median time is very robust to noise levels because the faint parts of the call go away, but that doesn't really affect the measurement of the median because most of the energy is in the loud parts of the call. I'm not going to talk about all these features. There's a paper in your detection workshop folder. describes this whole measurement system, these noise-resistant measurements. And so if you're interested in using these measures, I invite you to read that. It describes all the measurement names in Ishmael that start with an M. So all these M things are described in there, and there are all kinds of ways of measuring calls. The measurements work even for calls that tend to like fade out over time, or spread across a lot of frequencies with gaps in between. There are things for measuring all those things, harmonics and frequencies that sweep up or sweep down or whatever. They're all in there. Oh, I should mention that most of these noise-resistant measurements were started by a guy named Kurt Christoph, who works for the National Park Service and their Quiet Parks initiative. He came up with kind of the statistical methods for doing these things and devised them in the first place. So now we have a data log with all of the components in it. We want to save that. So when Ishmael makes these measurements, they're just in Ishmael right now. They're not stored anywhere. We probably want to store them. You do data log as. Save it as a comma separated value file. So it just puts all the numbers in there and the names of the measurements as comma separated values, which you can then open in Excel or another spreadsheet or Google Sheets or MATLAB or whatever your analysis tools are going to be. For some reason, it's not working on these. It's working on my laptop.
Working on versus.
Of course, versus, yeah.
On the RT comes.
Hopefully you can fix all these.
That was a new one.
Okay. Any questions about measurements?
Maybe you covered this, but I've done a bunch of different things. So if you open a calibrated file, can you actually pull out like receipt level in relative to dB per micropascal type measurements?
No, it doesn't. Ishmael doesn't currently have a calibration facility in it for specifying how sensitive your hydrocone was. So it doesn't give you absolute measures. These measures are mostly based on what the background noise is anyway. So it doesn't, it does measurements relative to background noise, but it doesn't do absolute ones. Absolute receipt levels. That's a good question. Okay. Converting sound file formats. This is a kind of useful thing that Ishmael will do. If you have sound files recorded in AIF format, you want to convert them to WAV files, or you have one of those sound file formats that's not a native sound file, when we're opening that DAT file, you can convert them to a WAV file using Ishmael. So let me show you how to do that. We're going to do it with this whale file. We're going to convert it from a file to an